Nihilism is a sickness of a young mind. I remember myself when I was young, and I played with this idea of nihilism because you haven't developed yet respect for life. You haven't developed yet the idea that life is really short, and the longer you live, the more you understand how precious life is. And that's why you play with this idea that nothing matters. And in some sense it doesn't. It depends what approach you take, through what lens you see the world. It's easy to be nihilistic. It's easy to have this desire to burn the world and dance on its ashes. To build is hard. To build takes time, takes effort, takes consistency, takes learning. But to destroy just takes power of the mob. And a lot of people want to destroy more than to create, because creation requires something special. Maybe that's why we believe in God, because we still praise creation. We still want to believe that we were created for a reason. Even when we created something ourselves, we discover in this meaning in creation. When you create a book or something else, you want to believe that you did this for a reason. There's something deeper in your creation. It's something that will live after you die, this hope. While nihilism is just destruction of everything alive. It's easy to convince yourself that everything is darkness, that everything is senseless, and there's no point to struggle, because you will lose anyway in the end, since you're just a biological creature, and you will die one way or another. And what's the point to live 5 more extra years, or 20, or 30, or 50? Because life will end in the end. But at the same time, the argument against nihilism is this ability within us to struggle, to thrive for something better. You cannot create even yourself without this internal struggle. You always have to overcome something. You have to always to hold yourself, to create this internal order. Otherwise, you cannot fight this entropy and the chaos of the outside merged with the chaos within. And you sink, and you will sink inside of this chaos, one step at a time, thinking that you're in control of this chaos. And that's where illusion comes from a lot of nihilists, because some nihilists try to make this idea of chaos as cool. In some sense, like Joker, who liked to burn the world. We created some sort of cultural praise of nihilism through certain characters, while in reality it's not so tempting. In reality, nihilists don't look cool. They look out of shape, mental and physical. They're weak in some sense because they give up on themselves and on their life, because that's the actual point of being nihilist. You're just giving up on yourself completely. And then you're giving up on your life and on the outside world. You don't want nothing to do with that. That's what nihilism is. It's like faith in zero. You don't believe in anything. You believe nothing makes sense. And in hundreds and thousands of years, nothing will matter anyway. then what's the point to struggle? What's the point to improve this life? What's the point to improve yourself? Because in some sense, you're just a biological entity, incredibly fragile and prone to die any day now. What's the point to have kids? There's a lot of suffering in this world. What's the point to create? Because people around you might destroy it or might hate you because you create something they couldn't. There's a lot of envy, there's a lot of resentment. And that's what nihilists do. You can actually really easy to sink inside of the nihilism. And the resentment is the worst. When you stop taking care of yourself, you start developing resentment within. You start comparing yourself more and more with the outside world and with the people of the outside world who keep struggling, who keep fighting. And you suddenly realize this real hate within. One of the great books I've read several times is Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It's a book about this bureaucrat who was living in his little tiny apartment and hated the entire world. He goes through so well in this book, Dostoevsky. And the funny part in this book is when this little bureaucrat who hates the whole world, he speculates and he tells incredibly hard truth that if you give people everything they want, all the cakes they want to eat, and just busy themselves with procreation, in the end somebody would try to destroy everything because it's in our nature. That's interesting because a lot of people have this argument that if you give people everything they want, there would be no violence, there would be no destruction. Everybody would live in peace, as some external factors affect your idea of peace and not internal. And I think the desire toward destruction comes from internal part of us who have this. I don't know why, but we do have it. And there's this argument that's incredibly dangerous because you give people everything they want, and I think they will turn into destructive beings, ready to inflict suffering on everything around them, but mostly on themselves, because you cannot inflict destruction and suffering on others without inflicting destruction and suffering on yourself. You always suffer, always. When you spread darkness, you have to be part of it. It's the same like creation. When you create something good, you become better as the result of this creation. The same with destruction. When you spread destruction, you become worse as the result of this destruction. And that's why the argument that if you give people everything they want, they will be happy and there will be paradise on this planet is wrong. Because that's not how humanity operates. It's not how our emotions work. It's not how we feel. It's so complicated. We're incredibly complicated creatures. What we need is the meaning of life. And we can find even this meaning in nihilism. Although it's going to be in contradiction with this. But we live of contradictions. We think nihilism makes no sense, make no meaning. But that's the point. Not to take responsibility for your own life. And it's tempting. That's what I said in the beginning that nihilism is a sickness of a young mind. Because when you're young and you're emotional, you want everything and right away. And when you can't get it, of course you're not going to get it, you become resentful. You become nihilistic. You start hating the world and people around you. Because the wisdom comes from experience. The wisdom comes from years of being alive, from years of observing life, from years of observing people around you and try to figure out, okay, how should I perceive the world? What should I do to become more successful within myself? Because the whole idea of success is to be successful within yourself, to be content with yourself. Because you live with yourself 24/7. And if you cannot stand to be alone with yourself, that's scary. Because you are your main friend and enemy. You live with yourself inside your head. And you have to get used to it. And resentment comes when you compare yourself with other people constantly, forgetting that you have to compare yourself with yourself, how you were yesterday or the day before yesterday. You cannot compare yourself with other people because you don't know about other people. Other people don't exist. You don't know about their life. Everything you see about them is not true because they try to project success, but it doesn't mean they're successful. There was a good example I heard from somewhere. I think it's from Jordan Peterson when he said, when you see a young man driving an expensive car with a beautiful blonde, and you think like, wow, I want to have the same, but are you really one of the same? Because this man might stole this car, and this blonde must be a hooker who's addicted to drugs, and this man's life might be in mess. You don't know how they live. We don't know nothing. We see projection. We see just tiny image of the reality they try to project upon us. That's where resentment comes. Resentment comes from this inability to see the truth. And that's what nihilism, the same stuff, because we try to pay attention to other people constantly and stop paying attention to ourselves. Lives of others become more important than our own life. Dreams of others become much more real than our own dreams. And we forget about ourselves completely. And then we become resentful, angry human beings. And then we play with nihilism, with this faith in zero. But if you have faith in zero, zero is all you've got. And if you don't believe in yourself, and if you think that something was taken away from you, something essential, then how are you supposed to change something about your life? You know what's scary is when you blame everything else or blame everyone else around you. Once you do this, there's no way to change your life. But if you take blame on yourself, then there's opportunity that you can correct yourself, that you can change the course of your life, because if you believe life in your own hands, then yes. But if the world is bad, then there's no way to do anything but just to become more and more resentful, more and more out of physical and mental shape, because the world is horrible. The world is hell. And you can confirm your bias easy now through the phone. You go online and you watch videos or read articles that confirm your bias, how bad the world is. And there's a bunch of bad information that would destroy you completely. Or you just mind your own business. Try to be a better version of yourself. And suddenly nihilism becomes a sickness that you understand. And once you understand that nihilism is a sickness, you start looking for cure. And the cure from nihilism is personal responsibility. When you take responsibility for every single thing in your life.